Hello, everyone, and welcome to the HBCU Sports and Entertainment Summit. I'm your host, Khyri Lueben, Junior Business Management major at Howard University from Minnesota. And today we're kicking off the summit with the Bigger Than Sports segment with none other than two-time Super Bowl champion and community leader, Torrey Smith.
Torrey Smith will be there. Second down and 6, going deep for Smith on his first catch. He is gone for a Baltimore touchdown.
Yeah, and you say Audemars.
Flacco with time. Flacco going deep, and it's holding with a flag. Torrey Smith with the touchdown.
Torrey, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Appreciate you having me, man.
As a seasoned NFL veteran, Torrey, you've played and taken home a Super Bowl championship ring for two different teams. Do you recognize any similarities between those teams in terms of their, habits or work ethic?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing was culture. I still remember my first week in Philadelphia. I was like, no, this team has it. You know what it's like. And part of that was I came from San Francisco where the culture was not the best at the time. Two different coaching changes in 2 years. We were struggling. To be honest, we sucked. We were trash, to be completely honest. And so you kind of know what it looks and feels like because I had already won it my second year in the league in Baltimore. So going there, I recognized that the leadership, and trust really was the biggest thing. Egos were put to the side. Everyone, you could tell they were really pulling the rope in the same direction. And everyone was playing for each other. And that's really the one thing about the game of football. Like, it brings everyone together, right? Like, if one person doesn't do their job, it can ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah.
And so, between those two, those are the biggest similarities, just the culture, the selflessness, and wanting to be together and really just chasing the work ethic and never stop, and that's really the biggest difference.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely, with your mindset going into, your first Super Bowl as well as, your second one, how did that, it's kind of being a younger guy on the team initially, and then later on kind of being that veteran with that Super Bowl experience, how did that, kind of come into play?
Man, just two completely different experiences. I remember my first year in the NFL, we went to the AFC Championship game. We lost to the New England Patriots. We, didn't make a play in the last minute, and we really should have won the game. I'm still salty about that one. But then the following year, we come back, and we actually make it to the Super Bowl, and we win it. And so I just assumed, it was always going to be like that. That's just how it goes. You know what I mean? The Ravens, we were nice. And then we missed the playoffs the next year. And then we went back, and then we lost in the playoffs. And then I went to San Francisco, and the playoffs wasn't even a dream. We were so bad. You know what I mean? And so you're like, all right, now get to Philadelphia and you're there again. One, you appreciate the opportunity. You realize that it's not promised. It's not that easy. And you realize how much work it takes to get there. And so for me, it was more so just really about just cherishing that moment, cherishing that opportunity, and understanding that, as we all know with life, that the show keeps moving with or without you. So when you have the opportunity, live in that moment, enjoy it, and really try to cherish it as much as you can.
How did you get yourself, locked in and hyper-focused, before the game?
For me, man, I was always laid back. I never really tried to get too hyped. To be honest, I probably have the most heathen playlist alive. It make no sense. I'm going from trap music to gospel to everything. You don't know what you're going to find on there on my playlist, but I always just still try to stay, kind of mellow, right? I always felt like when I was too hype, I used to try to feel that way when I was younger, and I'm going out there the first play of the game, my heart's beating all fast, I'm tired. I'm like, man, this is too much, dude. You got to learn to relax. You've been there before. Just let the game come to you. So I was always laid back, just trying to have a good time.
Yeah, whatever gets you focused, and, you spent all week and really, all those other years in your career getting ready. So, you're definitely ready for the moment.
Absolutely.
Are there any strategies or habits that you implement in your daily life, that while playing football, could be adopted to, some students aiming for, success within school?
Yeah, I think a lot of those habits, they were built from sports, really, is just being disciplined, right? Being committed to something and having a plan. You don't go into a game without having a plan, a blueprint. So I apply that same logic to school or whatever you're in. You can't go to school and just think, oh, I'm going to go to class and that's it. Like, no, how are you going to, what's your plan to make sure that you're prepared, right? We know some of us can get away with going to class and just being there. Some people don't go to class at all and still make it. So everyone has their own thing that works for them. But for me, I always try to build a plan around everything. And so in the real life now, back when I was in school, I have attention issues. So I had to go to the library to study. Like we had study hall at the facility and they provide great things in college. But, you know, I can't study with a lot of people around or loud noises. So I would have to, part of my plan was a couple of days a week, I would leave my laptop. And so if I had to write a paper, I would write it by hand first and then put it on there, because if not, I would have been on Facebook or something else back in college at the time, getting all distracted. So I had a plan to make sure I stayed on track. And so the same thing in life now, you know, more agenda-based, trying to write down what I need to do, prioritizing things and making sure they're in order. And so that goes for everything else. Really kind of the same thing, because if I was back in school, I had my priorities in line. I'm not saying I just stayed in the house all the time, but I made sure business was taken care of before I went out and had fun. You know, and the same thing comes into play now, along with 3 kids and a wife in the mix. It's like, man, you have to take care of business first before you go and you do anything else. So it's really no different. And that same thing happens on the field. You know, you have to stay committed to the game plan and adjust, you know, when they don't go that way. But you don't simply just throw away everything that you know. Like you stay on your path and you continue to push.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You know, I think those are really good pointers. I know me, I always keep my, you know, planner on hand just for, you know, anything to hopefully cross off, you know, anything I have to add. And then, like you said, you know, making sure I get everything done, you know, before I get to have fun. But some might not know this, but you earned your MBA from the University of Miami while playing professional football. Can you speak to why you felt it's important to earn your MBA despite having a solid career in the NBA, in the NFL?
To be honest, it was all about knowledge, right? I felt like, you know, I grew up broke, right? My folks didn't have any financial literacy. Go to college, I'm sheltered by my scholarship, right? And, you know, we didn't have money like that in college. So, but I did have a free meal and a place to stay. So, you know, I was able to kind of navigate through that, but I was always able to budget based off of just not wanting to lose money, right? I was kind of the opposite of what I saw growing up. And so I get to the league and now, you know, I'm 22 years old. You know, I'm in my low 20s and now I'm making 6 figures. And you're like, all right, like, what do I do? You know, how do I manage this? How do I know if I'm doing too much? You know, my family was struggling. How can I help? You know, what's helping, versus what's crippling me. And so my mindset was always, I want to live okay now, like do the bare minimum now so that I can have a great head start as a 27-year-old young man, because you never know what's going to happen with your career. Right. And so I realized I'm meeting with my financial advisors and doing all these different things. And I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Right? They're like, oh, we're going to let your money work for you. And they're explaining stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. And so I made them educate me on what they were talking about. But I'm like, no, I need to go and learn for myself. So I knew I wanted to own some businesses. I knew I wanted to do some different things. But you can't do any of that if you don't know what you're doing. Right? I feel like sometimes people say, I want to be an entrepreneur. Okay, well, how's your math skills? Hey, what do you know about taxes? Because I remember the first time I got my signing bonus, that thing was about chopped in half. You're like, all right, you know, any money you were counting over that is done, right? So if you're not aware of these things, you don't know, you can't help yourself. So that's why I really went back to really understand finances more. I probably could have just taken one finance class to get what I really wanted out of it. But, you know, you learn about leadership, you learn about executive leadership and really how to kind of be a professional. So for me, it really just made me more well-rounded as I continue to transition, you know, throughout my life and my career.
Yeah, I definitely get that. You know, kind of like within that, you know, managing your MBA curriculum, how are you able to stay, you know, in shape, both physically and mentally, you know, for football? I know you kind of spoke to it about, you know, like your planning and stuff, but how are you able to do that? Yeah,
it was a specialized program which helped. Like the classes were kind of based around the off season and it was hard. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like cramming all of that stuff in was hard. I had to do it all over again. I wouldn't. I would have waited till I retired. But it was tough to do. But it was, it was definitely worth it. You just had to be committed to it because I was taking an online class in camp one time. In the NFL camp, I'm still finishing up my online class. So it's a lot that went into it. But at the end of the day, it was all worth it. And again, it was all about prioritizing things. It was something I wanted. Something my wife wanted as well. She went and did the same because our schedules were the same as a family. She went and did it as well. So it worked out for both of us.
Yeah. So, kind of adding on to that, speaking to some of the college athletes now who might be considering, leaving school early to pursue sports professionally, what advice would you have for them on their journey?
I think first thing is know where you are, right? Because I left as a redshirt junior. So for those who don't know, I was technically in college for 3 years and a semester, but I didn't play my freshman year, right? And so I was able to redshirt. So I just kind of took my classes. But any chance I had to take a class, I did. So I left as a redshirt junior. Now, I took so many classes, every chance they offered, that I technically, going into my redshirt junior year, which would have been finishing up my third semester in that summer, before I started what would have been my academic senior year, I could have graduated that summer because of the way I was grinding in school and classes and all of that. So I was in a set place. For the big leagues, to me, was never my goal. I just wanted to try to figure out how to get my school paid for it and leave debt free. Like, that was my number one goal. And then I just so happened to see some of my friends going. I'm like, wait, they can do it. I can do it. You start like, let me take care of business first. So for me, I graduated. I had a whole nother year to play. And my plan was, okay, I'm going to graduate early. And that's fall during the season. And then I'm going to go spring, summer, and that following fall and work on my master's. That was my original plan. Like, when I mapped it out before, I knew I had the opportunity to leave early, but I played well. So I had the opportunity to leave. But the number one thing was I knew where my academic standings were. So I had my degree. That was what was most important to me. Mm-hmm. Other kids, other students, it's important to know where you are in your career. Because if you're just leaving just to leave and you're not going to get drafted high, you're wasting your time. But if you're like, all right, I want to get my clock started on my next phase, and I have a chance of getting drafted, then to me, it's worth it, depending on what your situation is, because nothing's guaranteed. You don't know if you're going to get picked. You can feel like you're going to get picked, but you don't know. And so that's kind of the scary piece. So for me, it's about having all your ducks in a row and being confident, taking that leap of faith. Because if it doesn't work out, then you can finish your degree. And I'm never a person that knocks people for leaving early, because at the end of the day, people don't like when I say this, but we all go to college so we can make more money. You can say, oh, I want to be smart. Smart, all you want, whatever. Everyone goes and gets degrees to elevate themselves, to put themselves in a better position to make more money. It is what it is. They don't have to believe it. They don't have to say it. Like, I just want to be as smart as I can. Well, that's just what happens with that territory as well. So for me, I always felt like, if it's your opportunity to get to that next phase and get your life started off right, you can go back and finish your class. But you have to make sure you have a concrete plan before you make that decision.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always good to, kind of have, like you're saying, just that planned out and, what you want to do. And also, having that backup plan too, just in case, maybe your plan A doesn't always necessarily go right. But, a lot of times we hear athletes often, wasting all their money, on flashy cars and clothes. But, you put a lot of money back into the community. What inspired you to give back and in the ways you have?
Hey, I think for me, it's always about, I knew what it was like not to have anything. And so, I have some nice things. I'm sitting in a house right now that's a nice house. I ain't about to lie, right? But for me, it's like everything was always in moderation. I never purchased anything while I was playing that I couldn't maintain, or even I never did anything lifestyle-wise that I couldn't maintain when I stopped.
Yeah.
But that was always my plan. I always felt like, and the best financial advice I ever received was, would you rather live like a king for a day or like a prince forever? And so that kind of stuck with me. So all of my decisions, understand that football could be done like that. Your contracts aren't guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to make millions, right? Like everyone thinks you do. All these football players aren't making millions. Some of them are making six figures, and they get that for 1 year. So then what do you do after that, right? Like, it's important to kind of put that into perspective. But even the guys aren't aware of that because they think the next opportunity is going to come. So I always lived like what I had was what I had. And then when I was done, like my lifestyle is the exact same. Now I did well too. I'm not going to make a little change as I got older, but I always lived the exact same way. And so that worked out in my favor. But the community, that was always important to me simply because I knew what it was like not to have anything. You talk about the holidays, my family, we needed those turkeys at times. We needed gifts at times. And so even when we struggled, my mom was always trying to help other people. So it was kind of just always this thing that stuck with me because of the way my family was. And it really kind of impacted me when you go out and you realize how kids look up to you, families look up to you, and you had the opportunity to bring people together to help to support them, whether it's for a day or bigger causes like we've grown to. It started with those holidays, back to school things. I never had my school supplies on time, right? It started with those things, but then it grew to, okay, how can we help them with their confidence? How can we help them with their enrichment, get their academic skills up to par, up to grade level and beyond? How can we provide scholarships, right? And it just kind of grew from there. And so these were all things that, again, if I didn't have my scholarship, my life would have been completely different at the time, right? And that's what kind of goes into my mind. And I always feel like if you have the opportunity to help someone, you do it. And that's really kind of what my life purpose has been, along with my wife as well.
Yeah, it's really great, what you're doing. And I definitely admire it and, hope to do it, pass it along as well. But, it's really important for athletes to get involved in their community. How important do you feel that, giving back really is?
I think it's everything. As an athlete, beyond just, as a person, right? If you see someone struggling and you have the opportunity to help, you do it, right? And I always felt like as an athlete, it always kept me grounded. I was in college doing the same thing. I was in high school doing things to help other people. So in the league, I would go, we play a game. The next day I was doing something in the community. Like, it just kept me grounded. Like, you would always remember, like, no matter if you had the best game of your life and you come back and you see people that are living in the real world, it kind of brings you back down to earth. You had the worst game of your life and you see people and you realize they still love you for you. It still brings you, like, keeps you level headed. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I always, like, once I realized that people really are looking at me a certain way, it's like, man, that's a responsibility that you have to take on, because to me, that was only a responsibility that I really kind of ever felt was from my family. I'm the oldest of 7. So that was, people looking up to me, and I felt like I had to kind of make sure I was being the right example. And obviously, as I continue to grow and mature and move on in life, you realize, like, wait, it's not just your 6 younger siblings. It's hundreds of thousands and, millions of kids that had the opportunity to see you play on Sundays. So that's kind of how I've always lived. And, I don't put pressure on myself to do anything. I'm always myself. If you see me, I'm always myself. I don't try to be someone else. I don't try to fit the mold. I don't try to be politically correct or do the right things all the time as people would want me to do or say. But I try to live and be my authentic self and simply do the right thing. And I think that's the best way to do it. Find what you're passionate about. Stick to that. Don't do what someone else told you they're passionate about or what they can do. Like, there's enough need out here that if your heart is in the right place, you can help someone. So I think it's important to stick to, what you truly care about.
Yeah. And it's definitely good to know that, there's things out there that are, like you're saying, bigger than the game. That sometimes when it comes down to it, you really need to help out. And like you said, there's, people out there that really, anybody can help. You don't even necessarily have to be, a professional athlete. But do you feel kind of in that, within the community and helping the community, do you feel like it's important for athletes to take stance when it comes to, certain, political, events and opinions?
Absolutely. I feel that way about everyone. I know we use athletes because that's who we visually see, right? In the newspaper, whatever it may be. But to me, I think wrong is wrong. I've always felt that way. Like, you can ask my teachers from middle school, high school, whatever. If I felt like something was wrong, I was never shy about bringing it to the front. So people know that this is a problem. This is hurting people. Like, let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. Let's address it. And I feel like that's the same way. People shouldn't be uncomfortable speaking up on something that's bothering them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just feel like that is the lowest level you could possibly bring it. Like, people shouldn't be forced to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then it's important to say people shouldn't feel uncomfortable, right? Because of the way society is. And so that's wrong. And if you recognize that, and I tell people, like, you can't say how someone else feels, right? Like, for a lot of people who don't know what it's like to be a black man or a black woman in America, they're like, oh, there's no way it's like that. Well, you can't tell someone how they feel, right? And it's about someone else that may be in the LGBTQ community. I can't tell them how they feel, but I can learn and listen and figure out what's common and how can we figure out to make so they feel comfortable in their space, right? Whoever it may be. That was just an example that popped to my mind. So I think if there's something that bothers you, like, we shouldn't be handcuffed and tied down and forced to live and be unhappy, right? Mental health is a major issue, right? Like, there's certain things you shouldn't be forced to do. And I feel like for athletes, if you recognize something is wrong, speak up. Like, it's not just about you. Now, you talk about this protesting, police brutality, all the stuff that happened over the last 5-6 years. I mean, I used to speak, I used to talk about it all the time. Yeah. Like, what Cap decided to kneel, because it's not a Kaepernick issue. It's not an NFL issue, right? I've had guns drawn on me 4 times by officers, all before I was 21, right? So you think about this, like, yo, that's real life experience. So speak up on it, right? You know, your auntie or your cousin has something happen to them. Speak up about it. Right. And so I think too often people try to stay in their bubbles or be comfortable. Like, you don't have to be Martin Luther King or Malcolm X and lead a rally, but you can use your voice and your actions to make sure that you're not just allowing things to happen. Because, you know, I feel like if you're being silent and you're not speaking out about something when you recognize a wrong, then you're basically accepting it.
Yeah. And I definitely feel like, you know, like you said, kind of over the last year or two, you know, especially a lot of athletes have, you know, come out and spoken about, you know, some of these issues, and not only those, but, you know, some of their own, you know, individual experience and stuff, like you were saying. So I definitely see, you know, and just people as well, you know, definitely being, you know, speaking more to that light. But, you know, with some more recent news, you know, the NCAA is now allowing players to cash in on their name, image, and likeness. You know, how important is this ruling for college athletes?
It's huge. Everyone gets caught up in the fact that some athletes, not all, some athletes have scholarships, so they shouldn't complain. Like, no, folks still broke out here, right? Like, if you're in college, you're in school, like if there's an actor that goes to your school, I don't know, singer, Miley Cyrus. Let's say Miley Cyrus went to the University of Maryland with me. She could still make money off of her name, off of her image, but I couldn't because I'm an athlete. And that makes zero sense. I remember being in the stadium and watching people wear 82 jerseys, which was my number. It was a blank. It was no name on the back.
Yeah.
But it was 2 jerseys being sold in our school's team store. I don't make money from it, but obviously people are buying it because I was on the team. Right. And so I think it's like one of the things where people should always be able to make money for being themselves, especially in the era that we're in with influencers, right? Some of these athletes have millions of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers. They have ways to monetize and make money. It has nothing to do with their performance on the field, so, or the court, or whatever their field may be. Because guess what? There's Instagram influencers that are in college making hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions in some case. So I think it's about just being fair, allowing guys to have the opportunity and girls to have the opportunity to go and, you know, and maximize what they've earned by being themselves. And it's really important because that window was so short. Right? Think about how many college athletes we've seen that were superstars and didn't get their shot at the pros, or they got it and they just weren't like that, right? So their opportunities didn't continue to come and roll in. They could have made millions of dollars in some cases.
Right.
Tempting, right? He's a first rounder, so it may not work, but he's probably one of the biggest college football players ever. He would have made millions in college before he even stepped down in the NFL on the football field. So I think that Peter Warwick, so many. I can go down a list of guys. That's just NFL guys. NBA guys is the same exact thing. You know, you have gymnasts. You have It's all over the place. People just deserve to make money being themselves in a position that they earn, period.
If you had any, final words of advice you'd like to offer the students, now it's a great time for that.
No, I just stay the course. One thing I always did was write down my goals. I wrote it down, and then I write down the plan of how am I going to get to this. And then I would put it up, so I had to walk by it, and I would hold myself accountable to that, because you can't rely on your peers to hold you accountable to things. Everyone just ain't on the same page, right? Mm-hmm. Your best friend want to be a turn-up king, and he's not on the same level you're on and what you're trying to get to, right? Prioritize things. I'm not saying don't party. I was in D.C. as much as anybody else, but I took care of business first before I did that, right? And I don't drink or smoke, so it really was just staying up late for me. But I think it's important for people to recognize, like, that you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. You can't depend on your parents. You can't depend on your coaches. You can't depend on your auntie, your uncle, your professors to hold you to a higher standard. Go and get what you want, because you only have one shot to get it right.
So I just want to give, a big thanks once again to, you, Torrey, and I hope everyone enjoyed and, found some positive things to take away.
I appreciate y'all having me, man.
Thank you for being here. Thanks, everyone.